So today on Grand Cuisine, we are making a classic bean soup. We're going to take a look at the very famous Senate bean soup, but we're making good old-fashioned bean soup. We're using our wood-fired cook stove to really give us a wonderful flavor, and we're going to make a little cornbread with it too. So let's get our fire going and let's go ahead and cook. So the ingredients for our bean soup recipe is fairly simple. It includes some bacon, some beef, celery. We also have our beans that we have soaked overnight and they have plumped nicely. We're actually using a cranberry bean and some pepper. So I'm simply going to take the bacon and I'm going to cut it into kind of small pieces, just random, not very large. And then we're going to add that to the pan and let it cook for just a few minutes. In the original recipe, they add everything and water, and they don't allow the actual bacon or beef to get any sort of coloring or flavoring. And I think we want to actually cook it first before we continue with our soup. So we are cooking our bacon in our soup pan and we are rendering the fat. So we want to cook it to kind of pull out the fat without over browning the bacon. We don't want it to be crisp, but we do want to kind of eliminate that kind of raw bacony look by giving it just a little bit of texture and color, and of course rendering out that fat. Then we're going to add in our beef, cook that, and then proceed with our soup. So our bacon has rendered nicely, and we're going to go ahead and add our beef in. Kind of an odd recipe, but we're adding in beef as per the White House cookbook bean recipe. So we're going to let that cook just a little bit, and then we're going to be ready to add in our beans and our celery and let it go. Let's go ahead and chop up our celery. We're going to dice it up. We're going to use all of the celery, even the leaves and the tops of the celery. We're just going to kind of cut it into kind of a random dice. I'm kind of cutting it down till I get to the larger sections. We'll pull this out and we're going to chop that up a little bit. And then we can actually take and cut these in half and cut those, and we will add this to our bean soup. This is really the only garniture for this recipe is celery. No carrots, nothing else, just some celery. So we're going to go ahead and put that in, flavor it up. Doesn't even have any salt. We rely on the salt from the bacon to flavor our beans. So we'll see how it works. Right, so we're going to go ahead. We have our beans at a boil, and we're going to go ahead and skim this a little bit, and then we're going to add in our celery and our black pepper. This gives us a really good moment to talk about the history of beans. Of course, beans have been cooked for thousands of years, and many times there is no real recipe that originates. But I thought something that would be fun and interesting would be to talk about Senate bean soup. Of course, Senate bean soup was a famous soup that began to be served in the Senate dining room in the early 20th century. It was initially, so they say, requested by Senator Du Bois of Idaho, and they actually passed a resolution to require that the soup be served daily in the Senate dining room. So our beef and our bacon have gotten a little bit of color on them. They've browned up. We've got a little bit of flavor. So now we're ready to add our beans. So I'm going to bring in our beans, and we're going to add all those in. Now, once again, we soaked these beans overnight. I have drained them and refreshed them and added a little more water to them. And now I'm going to go ahead and add them in. And that's right about at a pound of beans. And then I'm going to add enough water to cover my beans. There we go. And we're going to allow this to come to a boil. And then we have to kind of skim the scum that beans will naturally kind of throw off to make sure our soup's nice and clear. Then we're going to add in our pepper, add in our celery, and let it cook. Newt Nelson of Minnesota, Senator Nelson, is also claiming that he requested Senate bean soup be served on a daily basis. So we may not know the exact story. These are both stories that you find on the website for the United States Senate. Another fun story that comes out is that supposedly in 1943, there was a day when the kitchens finally ran out of beans because of rationing of World War II, and they could not serve the bean soup. So, of course, what happened? The newspapers got a hold of the information, and they printed how the Senate could not have its bean soup. Went all over the country. And they don't know the exact conclusion, but supposedly what happened is the next day, more beans mysteriously arrived, and they were able to continue making bean soup. And they've been making bean soup every single day since then. So just kind of a fun, interesting anecdote about our government, and maybe we want them doing more committee resolutions regarding soups than some of the other stuff they work on. So we have our celery and we've put it into our soup. I'm going to add in some pepper, and we're going to throw that in, and then I'm just going to stir that up, and we're going to let this cook until the beans become soft. Of course, we're going to lose a lot of this liquid, and we're going to get a delicious, wonderful soup. We'll taste it. If it needs a little more seasoning, we'll add it in, but it may be just perfect. We'll see. For Mrs. Fisher's cornbread recipe, she actually refers to it as her egg cornbread recipe, we are using 1 pint or 2 cups of cornmeal. We're using 2 eggs, about a tablespoon of butter or lard, 1 cup of sour milk, and if you don't have sour milk, you can actually take whole milk and add about a tablespoon of vinegar to it, and it'll get sour real quick. And then we have 1 teaspoon of baking soda. So we are ready to start putting Mrs. Fisher's cornbread recipe together. So let's do it. So I'm going to take my eggs and I'm going to break them into my bowl, and I'm going to beat them up slightly. And then I'm going to add those right to my sour milk. And there we go. And we're going to mix that up. And then I'm going to add in just a little bit of the baking soda. I think we're going to add in just a little bit of salt as well. Maybe like half a teaspoon. There we go. And then we have this ready. And we will get our melted butter. Add this in. and combine it. This is, of course, the simple muffin method, where you melt the fat, you add that to the liquid ingredients, and then all that goes into your dry ingredients. We see this when making breakfast items like pancakes, waffles, and also making like muffins and other quick breads. I'm going to go ahead and add in my melted butter and stir that around. And then I'm going to add all of this into my cornmeal and my baking soda. And I'm going to stir that around just to combine it. And then I have our skillet in the oven with a little bit of fat in it. And I'm melting that. There we go. So let's go ahead and pull that out. And there we have our fat there. So we'll put that on our trivet here. And I'm going to put this right into our pan. And spread that out. And this will be ready to go into our oven and bake until it is golden brown. We're baking it on about 375 degrees, upwards of maybe 400 degrees, somewhere in that vicinity. Nice and golden brown, going in our La Cunza Classica wood-burning stove. And I think our heat is ready. Got to keep that heat up when we're baking, especially something quick like this. So we've already put a lot of logs into our box, and we're ready to go. So our beans are simmering away and the liquid is reducing. Truth be known, I did throw in an onion that I cut in half just for a little more flavor, and I did add a little bit of salt. So you kind of taste and experiment that on your own. But now we're cooking until the beans are very tender, and then we're also looking for our beef to be shreddable. So once our beef is shreddable, then our soup is going to be done. So it needs maybe 30 or 40 minutes more to continue simmering just like this. It's at a real nice simmer. So we're going to let it go, and then we're ready to serve and have it with our fantastic baked cornbread. So our bean soup is ready. We're going to add our cornbread to it. Add that a piece right there. So there we go. There is our bean soup with our cornbread. So nice, so delicious. Very, very simplistic cooking techniques. Very simplistic in seasoning. You can do whatever you want with this. You can certainly add in more seasoning. You can add in herbs. You can add in some chilies. You can add in almost anything you want. It really is kind of a blank canvas. So, but for the 1880s, this was the style that they were doing. Very simplistic and very hearty. So let's go ahead. Let's taste just a bit. It's got a wonderful, wonderful aroma. Super hot. Really good. It's going to be wonderful with our cornbread soaked in there. So there we go. And you just can't believe how hot things come off of the wood cook stove. It just blows my mind every time how really piping hot everything is. So there we go. Well, a very, very simplistic Grand Cuisine segment today. We are so glad that you joined us. Remember that we cooked everything on our La Cunza Classica wood cook stove from Spain at the woodcookstove.com. Contact them, look them up. They really are fabulous to cook on. I really hope that I've inspired some people to maybe think about adding one to their home, having the ability to cook on one and to use it. You'll really enjoy it. Tell them that Grand Cuisine sent you, and I think they'll set you up well. So for today, thank you so much for joining us. Please continue to subscribe to us. We so appreciate everyone who has subscribed, and we are trying to build, and increase this channel, increase what we do. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you'd like to see. We have a lot of fun stuff coming up, and I hope you'll be here for it. And so until then, from Grand Cuisine, happy cooking.